Hello everyone, this video is about UC0022 Analytical Skill Case Study Assignment. The topic that chosen by our group is the conflict between cultural tradition and individual freedom. So, for the introduction, cultural traditional shapes beliefs, customs, and practice passed down through the generation. They shape a community's identity, provide a sense of belonging, and help maintain social stability. In contrast, individual freedoms refers to persons' right to make their own choice without interference. Conflicts can be erased when cultural tradition limits personal choice, especially in areas such as marriage, gender roles, and religions. When tradition preserve cultural identity, they may also restrict individual rights if enforced without consent. This leads to a question: should cultural traditions be preserved if they limit individual freedom? So, moving forward for the problem statement part, the conflict arises when restrict enforced cultural norms infringe upon individuals' constitutional rights and personal freedom. In many societies, especially among women and marginalized groups, individuals may be pressured or compelled to participate in traditional practice without full consent. This creates a legal and ethics tension between communal expectation and individual autonomy, raising the key question of whether cultural traditions should be upheld when they restrict personal freedom.
Now, these are the objectives for our presentation for our case study today. So there are in total of three objectives that we are aiming for in this case study. Firstly being the cultural impact. We are evaluating the social and psychological impacts of prioritizing cultural traditions over the freedom of each and every individual in different sectors of the world. So in our case would be in South Africa. And the second one would be legal tensions, where we analyze the tension between customary laws used by locals as well as the constitutional rights of the people. Thirdly, would be to aim research for a balanced framework, to recommend a balanced framework that allows for cultural expression to be maintained while also maintaining human dignity. So, in a nutshell, what is actually happening in Makapanstat, South Africa, towards these widowed women? So, in a nutshell, there are three things that they are obligated to do so in accordance to their customary laws. First of all, there are mourning obligations which each and every widow must follow, which is a traditional mourning practice, for example, wearing the inzilo as seen in the picture, as well as social restrictions where they are unable to really socialize with anyone or even leave the house at one point. So the second one would be the fact that these mourning obligations occur in extended duration. Some practices can last for months, maybe even up to years, if the person is very powerful. And lastly, the reason why they do this, in according to the law, it would be to have a cultural purpose where actually these mourning obligations are to honor the deceased and also to preserve the cultural values of the community. And so the question arises, when these widowed women are subjected to such customary laws, what are the things that they suffer from in reality? And we from these we categorized into three of these things. So these are the facts that they are now suffering from. And the categories are social and psychological impact, autonomy and rights issues, as well as the legal and cultural tensions. So, in terms of social and psychological impact, these women are actually facing social pressure because they feel a strong family and community pressure to comply with a customary law that has been ongoing and being followed for maybe uh, from first generation until their generation, which is frankly, a long time. And the effects of this is that they have limited freedom of movement as well as social interaction because of these customary laws, as mentioned in the slide previously. And consequently, the consequences of this customary law to them, the widowed women, would be the fact that it may lead to isolation of the society and also a reduced well-being overall, psychologically, mentally, as well as physically of these widowed women. Moving on would be issues regarding autonomy and rights, because usually these customary laws are actually enforced by husband's family instead of the wife's family, because they have a patriarchal hierarchy over there. So maybe if the women chose not to comply, they may result in stigma or even ostracized from the community as a whole. And this is also a restriction of personal choice and decision making in the part of the widowed woman, henceforth an issue in terms of autonomy. Now, lastly, would be the legal and cultural tension, because the Constitution protects both cultural rights and human dignity. And while at the same time, in this customary law, the widowed women don't really have a right to choose whether to follow this custom or not. Henceforth, a conflict between tradition and freedom of individuals.
So moving on to the analysis and discussion, the case of widowhood rights in Makaparstat show the tension between cultural tradition and individual human rights. First, from cultural perspective, widowhood rights are considered an important tradition in the community. These rituals help preserve cultural identity and show respect for the deceased and their ancestors. Because of this, many people believe that widows should follow this practice as part of their cultural responsibility. However, the reality is that many widows do not participate in this ritual voluntarily. Research shows that they often feel strong social pressure from the community. Many widows are afraid of stigma or being rejected if they refuse to take part in this tradition. Okay, so this practice can also have serious impact on women. In some cases, the ritual restrict widows from widow freedom, limit their social interaction, and may even affect their physical and mental well-being. From a human rights perspective, this raises important concerns. Everyone should have the right to personal freedom, dignity, and choice. So, while cultural traditions are important and meaningful, they should not harm individuals. Tradition should continue to evolve in a way that respect both cultural value and human rights. That's it.
And now, let's move on to the solutions that me and my teammates have gathered. First is the complete abolition of restrictive widowhood practices. These remove practices that limits the widow's freedom and protect human rights and dignity. It prevents coercion and discrimination, although it may face community resistance. The second one is to reform practices to make participation voluntary. Widows choose whether to follow rituals and disrespect culture while protecting freedom. It reduces stigma for non-participation and it also promotes personal autonomy. The third solution is legal protection and awareness program. It enforces laws protecting widows' rights. It provides legal support and protection. This raises awareness of human rights and prevent discrimination and coercion. And then, the fourth solution is community dialogue and cultural mediation. It encourages discussion with community leaders and news mediators to address concerns. It promotes the respectful cultural reforms and support gradual changes. The fifth one is economic and social support programs for widows. They provide financial assistance and offer job training and opportunities. These create support groups for widows and increase their independence for well-being. The sixth one is integration of gender equality education in community. This will educate communities on women's rights. It will promote gender equality values and challenge harmful stereotypes. It encourages respectful treatment of widows. And last but not least is the seventh solution, which is support from religious and cultural leaders. This encourages reinterpretation of harmful traditions. It promotes dignity and respect for widows. It also increases the community acceptance of reform. And then, the recommended solutions that me and my teammates have discussed is the most effective solution is a balanced approach. By combining solution 2 and 3, widowhood rights should be made voluntary, supported by community education and legal protection. This ensures that traditions can continue without violating individual rights or well-being. By combining cultural respect with autonomy and legal safeguards, this approach provides a sustainable and ethical way to reconcile tradition with human rights.
So the conclusion is individual freedom should be the foundation of justice even when cultural traditions are valued. Traditions that rely on fear or restrict personal choice lose their ethical worth. For a fair and inclusive society, cultural practices should evolve into voluntary expressions of identity supported by awareness and legal protection without compromising individual dignity.